null, which comes in place of the absence of maybe an object. Maybe you're trying to get an object and there is no any defined object. So that's the way you can get null. Then you can also um, assign it to a variable by yourself, of course. Symbol, well, we didn't actually much about symbol. In fact, I don't think we talked about symbol. The reason is because it's not commonly used. So that, likewise, undefined. Well, most cases you get undefined. I believe you guys are familiar with undefined by now. So the undefined, it's also maybe in the absence of a given value, or maybe you created a variable and then did not assign a value to that variable, which in that case the initial value is going to be undefined. All right. Likewise, creating variables too. I said there are three ways to create a variable actually. So we have var, we have let, and then we have cons. So we talked about that. So can I give some examples? Yeah, we did some things with variables. Okay, so but today we are not going to be talking about primitive types anymore. We are going to move on to reference types, which are the object and function. Okay. All right. Okay. So yeah, let's kick off with array. So arrays are said to be list-like objects. They store values in a list format and can be retrieved by indexes or iteration. That is looping. Okay, I'm going to explain this a bit. Okay, and we have samples. Okay, so the reason they say arrays are list-like rather is because when you want to create an array, of course, you just have to use know the syntax first and then know how it's used. So let me come to my VS Code now. Okay, so let's check that out. Let's check how we can create an array and then how we can use it. So I'm going to share my Visual Studio Code. Okay, so I have it here. Okay, so I shouldn't call this. Okay, let me create a new file, and I'm going to call it maybe array.js. Kill this terminal so that we can finish one. All right, so node one array. Okay, so that's good. Okay, I'm going to make my screen a bit bold so you guys can see it clearly. All right. So please, in case you have any question, don't hesitate to drop it in the chat section, which is the room channel. Okay. All right. So to create an array, it's basically simple. So let's start with let's create it. Let's create a variable and save the array inside the variable. Okay. So to create a variable now, in this case, let's use const. We'll call it okay. I'll call it list. All right. So the syntax for creating an array is basically just it's not a curly brace, but it's this bracket sign here. So I think yeah, that's just it. If you can see my screen clearly, you should be seeing the syntax right now. Like so, this is it. Just these two brackets. Then you have your array. So if I log this to the console now by saying console.log, then I type in list as the parameter, and then I hit Control S. So inside of my terminal here, you can see we have that bracket, the two brackets, and we have it there. Okay. So now we have an array. All right, we have an array. Okay. So how about though this is just an empty array, there's nothing inside of the array, as you can see, the bracket is still empty. So in order to put something inside, of course, there are different ways you can put items inside of your array. So, okay, please, if you're having trouble seeing my screen, don't hesitate to drop it in the channel. I mean, your own channel, so that I can troubleshoot it from my end here. Okay, so there are different ways for pushing items inside of your array. So of course we can use they're called prototypes. Of course, you can also call them methods, right? So let's add new list. And meanwhile, in our previous class, there's something I forgot to talk about, right? And I think is really essential, and I need to talk about it right now. So it's called comment, right? It's called comment. And because I didn't introduce it to you guys earlier in the previous I had to like be deleting some codes in order for you to be confused. So if I do something you don't understand, I do not explain it. Of course, it can get you. Okay, so how to what are comments? So in your code base, right? Let's say this file that I have, like this file right now. There are some codes that are going to be printed out for my console that are going to be compiled and executed, and there are some that are not going to be executed. For instance, if I leave a long space here now, and then as you can see, I have a code written on line 7. So all these spaces I have here from line 1 to 6, they are not going to be executed. They're not going to be compiled. They don't have any effect on the code base. Why? Because they're just empty lines. There's nothing there. Okay. So same thing goes for comment. So how can you like write comment in JavaScript? There are two ways. So you can have your forward slash and then asterisk. Yeah, you have it. That's for the first line, and then where you want the comment to end is going to be the next one. So for you to end the comment, you're going to also have an asterisk and then a forward slash to end it. So any code that goes into this two asterisk and forward slash this stuff, they are not going to be compiled or executed. So okay, so let me just write. So comments are commonly used for like explaining what doing in your code. For instance, if I want to okay, so I have const list here and then assign it to an empty array. So if I want to explain what I did there to you now, I'm just basically going to do it this way, saying okay, created an empty list or an empty array. Okay, just like that. So this comment I have up here, this comment I just wrote now is not going to be compiled or executed, right? So it's only this const list and then equal to that you're going to get. That's the only thing that's going to be executed by JavaScript. Okay. So let's check if we have any questions. Okay. So we don't have any questions here. Please, if you have a question, don't forget to ask. All right. Hmm? Okay. Yeah, don't hesitate. All right. Okay. Do not hesitate to ask questions, please. All right. So let's proceed. Um, by the way, using this asterisk sign, this first way of creating an array, the first way of creating a comment, this is just it here. Using this one, it allows you to like write multi-line comment. Okay, so you can have like a comment that spans across maybe different lines, multiple lines. For instance, I have created an empty array here. Let me say initialize it with some values. Uh, write more comment across multiple lines. Because we're using this forward slash asterisk to create the comment, it allows us to like be able to write comments across multiple lines. Okay. So, but if you just want to like maybe have a single line comment, if your comment is just one line, you can use double forward slash instead. So that's what I did here. So double forward slash, and then anything right after that double forward slash is just going to be ignored by JavaScript. So it's not going to compile it. Okay. So don't please bear in mind that anytime you see this double forward slash and then something is written after it, just know that it's a comment. So it's not going to be it's not going to be executed by JavaScript, and also the double forward slash. I mean, also the single forward slash and then asterisk. That's also the way of writing comment, but it is a multi-line comment. Okay, so I'm just let me just leave it here so you can see. I'll call this multi-line comment like this. Okay, so this is single line comment. Okay, so yes, now create an array, create an empty array. Okay, create an empty array. So that's what I did up there. I created an empty array. Okay, so I have my another comment here saying let's call it add an element or add some item to the array. So that's what I'm going to do. That's comment. I'm going to add an item to the array. All right. Okay. So how do I do that? Well, array has prototypes that it has a way of us adding items. It gives us different ways actually that we can use to add items to the array. For instance, okay, so we have this array, right? We can just say list. This list right now, it's the name of the variable that we initialized above, like up here. So we initialize this variable and then saved an empty array to it. So this array now, let's think of it as of course we've talked about variables before. So this is the value given to the variable. Okay, so this array allows us to do some things, some actions on it. I call it actions. Okay, so for instance, we have a list. How do we add items to this list? We have like how do we add items to the array? Of course, you can use this method dot push. We can use dot push. We can use uh we can use list as the array dot on shift. So these two ways we can use to add items to our array. And of course, you can use the index, that the position where you want to add item. Okay, so since array is a list, right? Let's say we have 5 items inside of an array. Of course, there's a way we should have a way of reading the list, maybe by the index, by the position. Let's say I have an item in the position of 3, and then I want to access that item, or maybe I want to like replace the item. You get, you have a list, you should be able to do such things. You should be able to like modify the list you have. Okay, so we're going to get that part, but let's start with list.push. Okay, so list.push, what it does is it adds an item to the end of an array. Okay, adds an item to the end of the array. That's this array we initialized up here before. So it the list.push, the dot push here you're seeing here, what it does is it pushes an item to the end of the array. Okay, so for instance, if in this our array now, let me mess this up a bit here. So let's say we have 1, 2, 3. Okay, so this we have, and there. Let me also chip this in real quick. So if you are having an array, the way there's a way of actually separating this list, right? So you have some list inside of the array. Since it's an array and list like objects or list like yes. So there's a way you can actually like differentiate those lists. Like this is item 1 in this list, item 2 in this list, item 3. Okay, so you use comma to actually separate them. So after this comma, then you have your item 2. After the comma, you have your item 3. So we have number 1, number 2, and number 3 is our array. Of course, we can, and arrays can hold different data types. Okay, of course, you can save maybe a boolean inside of an array. You can save a string inside of an array. Of course, you can even save an array inside of an array. Okay, and all your data types can go inside of an array. That's all your primitive types. Okay. Oh yeah, you can also have reference type. For instance, the array can go inside of an array. But the only thing I don't think can add inside of an array is a function. Okay. Okay. Well, let's see. We'll get to that part. Let me quickly check. Okay. We don't have any questions yet. That's good. Okay. So let's have true. We have false. We also have John. Let's call it John. Of course, this John is a string. So let's use let's put inside of our this thing quote. Okay, so the list are going to look like inside of the array. I mean, how the items are going to look like inside of the array. So we have one, two, three. I also have true. We have false. We have John inside of this our array. Okay, so I'm going to take that off now, and then we're going to add them using the dot push and dot unshift method. Okay, so below here, I think we've done console.log before, right? Okay, so we have it here. So let's keep our console.log within range. Okay. So now let's specifically add an item to it, add an item to the array. So list.push, this dot push method, or yes, the dot push method takes in a value, right? So you can have a value there. Let's assume that I want to push a string to it. Let me just push a string called John. So push John to it, and then so actually I want to, okay. So I think I'm sorry. I want to also okay, just so we can see it. Let me open this terminal. This big. So let it be like that. So yes, let me take off this and shift. So, and the same way you can create comment, like the same way you can write an explanation of something you did or you are about to do inside of a comment. That's the same way you can also comment out codes, right? So like this list dot on shift now, I have commented it out, so it's not going to JavaScript is going to ignore it and not execute it. Okay, so list dot on shift has been commented out now, so JavaScript is going to ignore it when it's compiling the code or executing the code. Okay, so now we pushed an item to the list. That's to this our list variable. Okay, so let me save and see. Okay, so I just hit Control S now, and then initially, so up here you can see in my terminal here we have an empty array here, right? It's just empty what's it called? Empty bracket. Okay, so after that line, check the next bracket we have has a single item inside of it, which is this John we pushed to it. So you can see we have John inside of the bracket now. That's because we did list dot push and then we pass John instead of the parameter here. So I'm still going to explain what parameters are, what methods are. Okay, I want to explain that. Perhaps I should have explained it before even coming to array. Okay, so yeah, so I have list dot push. Don't forget the list. This list you are seeing here, it's a variable, right? The list is a variable, and it's not just anyhow variable. It's because the value assigned to it is an array. That's why we are able to do list dot push. That's why we're able to do this dot push on it. Okay. So you cannot have like a variable holding a string value, for instance, John, or let's say Elijah, and then try to access dot push on it. It will not work. Okay. It's not going to work. So the reason we're able to do the variable name and then dot push is because the value the variable is holding is an array. Okay. All right. Just bear that in mind. So you don't like assign a string to a value and then try to access dot push. on that variable. It will not work. Okay. Okay. Let's check. Do we have any question? If you have any question, please don't hesitate to drop it in the room channel on our Discord server. Okay. All right. So yes, this is a way of pushing or adding an item inside of an array. Okay, using the dot push. And don't forget, dot push adds an item to the end of the list or to the end of the array. Okay, it adds an item to the end of the array. So now we pushed John inside of this empty array we have up here before. So the array is no longer empty again. As you can see, we have the array now inside of our terminal with a single item inside of it, which is John. Okay, this is it here, my terminal. Okay, so I'm going to also add another item. So let me say list that variable name dot push. Okay, so this time now I want to push let's say let me push like number here. So let me push 100. So I'm adding 100 to the I'm adding 100 now to the array. Okay, since push this dot push that we have here, since it adds item to the end of the array. Now what we are expected to see inside of the console if we execute this is something like this. Okay, so this is it here. So I commented this guy out. So you can see we have John and then 100. So this is what we are going to get inside of the console. If I hit Control S now, okay, bear in mind, and the reason why we are having this 100 immediately after John is because we're using the push, which adds an item to the end of the array. Okay, all right, so let me just hit to S now, and then go check inside of the terminal again, inside of our console, and we have the same thing up here inside of our code. So as you can see, we have John, and then after John, we have 100. Okay, so this dot push helps us to push an item to the end of the array. Okay, so how about if we want to push the item? Okay, add an item to the end from to the end of the array. Okay, so this comment now like what I just did is just to like oh, it's exactly what I did here before. Okay, so let me take this out, add an item to the array. Okay, so now I want to use our dot shift method. Okay, so this is going to add an item to the beginning of the array. Okay, so now I want to use list dot on shift. I want to use the dot on shift method. Okay, so as it has been stated here, it's going to add the item to the beginning of the array. Okay, so what we have before is John was the first item inside of the array, and then 100 is the second item inside of the array. So now we want to update the first item inside of the array. It's not as if we're updating it actually. So we are going to put a new item as the first item of inside of the array. Okay, so that was what I'm going to do now. So we are going to let me add true. So I'm putting a boolean inside. Of course, you know boolean is either true or false. So true is also a boolean data type. Okay. So of course we have string inside, which is the John. We have 100 inside, which is a number, and now we have true inside, which is a boolean. So I'm just using different data types, so you know that we can actually have different data types instead of an array. Okay. Okay. Someone is saying that I should explain the push. Okay. So we have so we want to add an item to the array since it. Okay. So how do we add an item to the array since it's empty? Even if it's not empty, of course, at some point you want to update the amount of items you have inside of your array. So the dot push method is actually used to add an item to the end of the array. So let's assume that we have about 5 items inside of the array, and then want to add another item to that array, that's to the list we have. So using dot push is going to add another item to the end. So it's going to be, if we have like 5 items inside of it, so the sixth item inside of it is going to be the one you added with dot push. Okay, so dot push adds an item to the end of the array, or of an array rather. Okay, so I don't know if this is clear enough. Please, if you still don't understand, don't forget or don't hesitate to like ask a question. Okay. Right. We're going to look at some examples from Mozilla Developer or Network very soon. Okay. So now we're using onShift now. So what onShift is supposed to do, or what it's going to do, is it's going to add an item to the first position in the array, right? Okay. So now we push through. Well, okay, I've saved already. So now let's check my console now. Okay. So now in my console, we have true as the first item inside of the array, and then John has been moved to the second position inside of the array. Okay, so before we added true as the first, we had John earlier as the first item, and then 100 as the second. But since we used dot shift to add true, since we used dot on shift to add true to it, John has been moved to index, position of the second position rather. Okay, so let's check. Do we have a question? Okay, we don't. All right, that's cool. So now we've seen ways of adding, and yeah, we've seen ways we can add item to an array. Okay, so of course there's still another way we can add an item to it. So that is using the index. That's using the position of the array. Okay, so now I think I should introduce this to you guys now. So, unlike unlike what we know before, in the list, let's assume that you have a list inside of your book, or let's say, how can I do that now? Okay, so let me just give an example here. So we have one, let's say John. I'm going to comment this out. Okay, so let me hide my console. So I want to do a multi-line comment here. Okay, so yes, just like this. So let's call this my list. Okay, so number 2, me, number 3, 100, number 4, true. Okay, so take this as sample list. Okay, okay. So take this as a sample list. All right. So let's assume that this is my book. Okay, in my book, my list is going to start from 1, right? So the first item on my list is John. The second is Remy. The third is 100. The fourth is true. Okay, so this is normal. This is the normal way, in real life, right? This is a real life scenario of creating a list. Of course, everything starts from number 1, right? But in JavaScript, when using an array to create a list, it doesn't start from number 1, that's index 1. Okay, arrays are said to be zero based, right? Since arrays are zero based, the first item inside of an array is index 0, not 1. Okay, is index 0. Okay, so um, I think there's a way we can find index. Okay, but then let's try to access our items individually. Okay, we don't want to like get all the items straight up inside of our console. So let me reduce this and bring back our console. So in our console, we have true as the first item. If you can see, that's true as the first item in the array. We have John as the second, and 100 as the third. I'm not talking about the zero based. I'm not talking about the index now. Okay. So if I was talking about the index, right? So the first item according to our index is the true is in index zero. It's not actually like the index is it's in index zero. I don't know how I'm going to explain this better. Like, true is in index zero, and then John is in index one. So 100 is index two. Since arrays are zero based, if you want to start counting, you start from zero, then one, then two, then three, right? So we have John as a zero at index. Sorry, we have true as the zero index, John as the first index, and then true as the second index. Okay, so now how do we access this individually? We don't want to like have everything out like this in the console. We want to have them individually. So let's assume that we want to like bring out John inside of our array. Okay, so how do we do that? So since arrays are zero based, John is definitely in the index one position, right? Since true is in index zero, then John is going to be in index one. So how do we access items through their index? Well, you are going to have like the name of the array, right? Followed by the bracket, and then you put the index inside of the bracket like that, straight in front of the array. Okay, that's straight in front of the array variable. That's the variable you save the array. Okay, there's no space between the name of the variable and the bracket. Okay, there's no space. So all you have to do is inside of the bracket, just type the position, that's the index position of the item you want to get out of the array. Okay, so according to our console here, you see we have true inside of the array as the that's the first item, which is the item in the zero index. But we want to access John, right? So let's just put one inside of this um that's inside of this our bracket here. So if I hit save now, in our console we have John. All right. So that's how to retrieve items from an array. That's one way of retrieving items. How about if you have multiple items inside of your array and then you want to like get everything out of the array? You cannot use the index, right? If you have like 1,000 items inside of your array, of course you can't use the index to start bringing them out one after the other. We're going to get to that shortly. But bear in mind that if you want to access a specific item inside of your array, you're going to use that index. Okay. So I'm going to like log the item in index two, which is 100. You can still see my console. We have true in the index zero, and then John index one, and 100 in index two. If I hit save now, then I have 100 in the console because I put the index zero, I mean the index two inside of the list, inside of our bracket. Okay. All right, please. If you have a question regarding this, what we're talking about currently, please don't hesitate to drop the question in the chat section. I'm going to like provide an answer to it as soon as possible. Just drop it in the chat section. Okay, so let's go back to our browser. Let's go back to our browser. All right. So we're going to look at MDN explanation of this. Okay. So yes, let me go to Angular Developer Community Network. So these are common operations you can do on an array. Okay. So we have create an array. This is how to create an array. So you just have the variable and then the bracket, and then you just pass in your values like this. You have the items this way, right? So we have two strings inside of the fruit variable. Okay. So we have a string inside of the index zero of our array, and then we have apple in the index zero of our array, and then we have banana in index one. Arrays are zero based, right? Okay. So we have apple in index zero and then banana in index one. So also there's a way you can check the length of your array, which they did just here. So if you have a thousands item, like maybe thousands item inside of your array, you want to use dot length to check the amount. But dot length is not going to start from, it's not going to start counting from zero. This is the human way of counting items or counting things. Okay, so that's what dot length offers. So it starts counting, just go like, okay, apple and banana, which is 1 and 2, right? That's what index. I mean, that's what the dot length does for you. It counts them not starting from the zero index. It starts counting from like number one. So the first item there is number one. The second item is number two, right? So according to this variable, I mean, according to this array, we have two items inside of it, and after doing dot length, we get two as the amount of items inside of the array. Okay. Okay. So we have another one here. Access an array item using the index position. We've done that just now. So we have we have fruit and then the index of zero. As you can see here, inside of the fruit array, apple is on the index of zero. That is in the position of zero. Okay. So after doing that, we get apple as the first item there. Okay. So let's check if we have some questions. Okay. Someone is asking if array is same as a list. Well, I don't really know the language you're coming from. If you've done maybe Python before, or maybe I don't know, maybe C or C++, I don't really know. They might not be called array, they might be called list or something. Okay. But if your question is regarding to what we have in our VS Code, then the variable list I have in my VS Code, I mean, the list is just a variable in my VS Code. So we'll check that shortly. Just hold on. Okay. All right. So according to MDN here, you can access like the item side of your array using the index position. We talked about that. So we have not actually talked about the dot length method. I mean the dot length property inside of our VS Code, but then we are going to get to that part. So now I mentioned something earlier, right? I said if you want, maybe if you have like hundreds of items inside of your array, you cannot use the index position to get all of them out. It's not possible. That's going to be a whole lot of stress because that way you are going to be doing from index 0 to index 100, and that is not something reasonable at all, not scalable. So how do we manage to handle this? How do we tackle this? Okay, we have like 100,000 items inside of our array, and then we want to like get all of them out, all the items out. How do we do that? Well, JavaScript gave us a couple of ways we can do that. Of course, one is for each. So this for each is actually a method, or we can call it a prototype. It's a method on top of the array. Right, it's a method given to us, right, on top of the array object. We call it that way. So for each, if you do for each, then using for each actually you can use for each to loop. I mentioned something about loop while I was explaining. Let me go back to our document here. So I said items can be retrieved by their index or iterating over the items, right? So that is looping. So if you are using for each, of course you are looping through the items, okay? And if you are using for each, so there are different ways you can actually loop. Use for each, you can use map, you can use for loop method. There are different ways you can loop over the items inside of an array, okay? Okay, so we've seen enough here. So we've seen enough inside of this document. So let's go to our VS Code and let's put all these things to action. Okay. So I'm going to share my VS Code now, and then we're going to look Okay, sorry, if anybody of you have any questions, please, if you have any question at all, don't forget, I said always ask inside of the room channel, okay? So, we've done enough here. So now, let's create another array. So, use const, and then we're going to like take off all this our console.log so they don't distract us. Okay, so I have const, um, let me call it favorite food, favorite, can't spell, favorite food, okay, so it's going to be, so I have pizza, I have pasta, sushi, well, all these are auto-generated, this time my favorite food, don't get it, don't be mistaken, okay, alright, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay, I have 5 items inside of it, well, counting, I have it, I just counted it, but then, let's also be sure that that's the amount of items we have. So then the dot length property. So don't forget name of the array, which is favorite food, then dot length. So this dot length is actually going to count all the items inside of your array and then give you the amount in number. Okay. So if I hit save now, we see in my console I have 5 here in my console. Okay. I have 5 in my console. So that's the amount of items inside of the array. Okay. So how, of course, you can also use this dot length to get the last item inside of your array. Okay. So this way, since we know that the dot length does not count from zero, doesn't is not the counting is not zero based. Okay. Dot length counting is not zero based. It's just starting from number one. Okay. Since we know that, and then if we try to use dot length, so let's save this length instead of a variable. We'll call it const um, length like that, and we save it to a variable called that's we have favorite food dot length. So favorite food dot length is 5, right? That's the item inside of our favorite food length is 5. Okay, so we save that number to a variable called length. Okay, so if I log length to the console, I should still get 5. Okay, so this is 5 inside of my console now. So now this 5, I want to pass it as the index, right, of my array. So I'm going to say favorite food and then pass in our double pass in our bracket. Okay, and then I pass the length inside like that. Okay, so we know that length is 5, right? So let's hit save. What do we get in the console? We're getting undefined. How is that possible? Of course, our the length of our item is 5. So therefore, we should think that our items is 5, and then we should be able to get the fifth item out of the array. Okay, so our array is having 5 items, right? And then we pass 5 inside of the index. I mean, we pass 5 as the index, and then we're not getting the item in the fifth position. How is that possible? As I mentioned earlier, arrays are zero based. Okay, so if you want to access the fifth item inside of the array, you should know that you have to pass 4 to it. What you have to pass um inside of the bracket, which is the index. Okay, the first should be the index. So it's going to start counting from zero. That means 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. If you count that, that should be 5. 0 is 1. 1 is 2. Okay, so 4 is 5. Okay, so how do we do that now? We have 5 passed as the index. So we don't have any item in the fifth position. Okay, so what do? We just subtract 1 from that 5. Okay, which should now be 4. If I hit save now, we have ice cream. So if you check our favorite food, ice cream is the last item inside. Okay, so that means that fourth position. Okay, so the index is actually fourth. I mean, okay. So we have pizza, pasta, sushi, cake, and ice cream. Now we just did length minus one, and then we got the ice cream. Okay, so this way we can add as much items as possible. Okay, and then using the length of the array, then minus one is always going to give us the last item in our array. Okay, regardless of the amount of array. Since we are using the dot length to count the amount of items we have in the array, and then we are subtracting one from it, then we know that we are surely going to get the last item. So now let's push another item to it to test this thing I just said now. So I'm going to push another item to the array. So I can call it potato. Okay, like that. Okay, so dot push. Don't forget what this dot push does. It pushes an item to the ending of the array. Okay, so now we are going to have potato as the last item inside of the array. I hit save now, and then we check the console. We have potato there. Okay, so that's simply it. And do not forget the position of this favorite with dot push is before we even count the length of the array. Okay, is before we count the length of the array. If I were to like take this dot push now and put it below this favorite with dot length and stuff, the length is no longer going to count potato as part of it again because potato was added before. I mean, after we've counted. I mean, after we counted the array, I mean, items inside of our array. Okay, so know how to order your code. Okay. Okay, so let me just let's test what I did just now. So now I've taken this potato, I mean this the push. I've taken it right below the part where we counted the list inside of our array. Okay, if I hit enter, if I hit save, we get ice cream. Okay, so ice cream is the last item inside of our array. So ordering your code matters. Okay, so you should know that by now. You should know that the code is being executed from top to bottom. That's from line one to the ending of your codes. Okay, so and JavaScript is going to execute them accordingly, right? So if we get to this favorite food dot length, to get there, it's going to count how many items are inside of the array and then save it inside of the length variable. It's going to do that first before coming down to this favorite food dot push part. Okay, so at the time it's counting here, the items is just five, right? So it's recorded five here. So after that line, when it gets to this array dot push, it just pushes the item there. It did not recount again. It did not recount the items we have inside of the array again. Okay. So if you want it to recount the items, then we are going to have another favorite food dot length down here. That's immediately after the push. Okay. All right. So let's check if we have any question. Okay. So we don't have any question here. All right. So so let's take this potato the part we push potato to our array. Let's take it off. So check now. We have potato dot. I mean we have potato as the last item. So if I log a favorite food dot length now, also dot log favorite food dot length. So this well. So now I have favorite food dot length. If I try to count the length of a favorite food now, it should now turn to six because we've pushed our potato to the list or to the array. So we added potato, so it's now six. Before it was five. Okay. So let's go back to our document. All right. Okay. So we've seen how to add an item to the end of an array using the dot push method. Okay. So now we're going to talk about removing items from the array. Okay. So of course, inside of your list, you can add and you can like remove. Okay. So how do we do that? We have push, right? For adding items to the end of our array. Okay, we have push. So also we have pop, POP. So we have pop. Pop is used to remove an item from the end of an array. Okay. And I also talked about on shift. On shift is used to add an item to beginning of an to add an item to the beginning of an array. Okay. That's for on shift. But shift is to remove that item from to remove the item from the first position. Okay, so pop is to remove item from the last position in the array, and shift is to remove from the first position of the array. Okay, so now let's go back to let's see what they did here. So they did pop. So where is the okay? So when they did push, at the time they did push, they have three items inside of the array here, which is apple, banana, and orange. So after they did pop, Pop removed that orange that was added before. So they use push to add orange, right? And then they use pop to remove the orange. Now you can see there's no longer orange here again. Okay. So likewise, shift. So they use shift to remove the item in the first to remove they use shift to remove apple from its position. Meanwhile, apple is the first item out of the array. So they use shift to remove it. Now they only have banana left. We are going to do that. Yes, we are going to do it. Okay, so let's head back to our code base. Okay, so I have my VS code here. All right, let's check it out. So according to us, we have pizza, pasta, sushi, cake, and then ice cream. And also we've added potato. Okay, so now instead of logging the length of our array, we are going to log the entire array. Okay, so if I hit save now, we have all our arrays here. All the items in our arrays inside of the console. Okay, so we have pizza, pasta, sushi, okay, inside of the console. So now, let's remove that potato we added before. So, in fact, let me take away this line. Okay, so we're going to do favorite food dot pop. So pop is a function like that, right? The method. So be sure to add these two parentheses in the front. So you don't need to pass any anything inside of the parentheses. Just type it like that. So pop. Before I hit Control S, let's take a look at the array inside of our console again. So we can see that potato is the last item there. Okay. So if I hit Control S now check the array. The last item now is ice cream. Okay, so now I have ice cream as the last item. So if I duplicate this array dot pop, if I duplicate the favorite food dot now we have two favorite food dot pop. So therefore, before I hit Control S, take a look at it well again at the array inside of the console. Ice cream is the last item now inside of the console. Okay. So now if I hit my Control S now, ice cream is no longer the last item again. Now it's cake. So this pop has taken away since we wrote the pop twice. It's going to delete two items in the array like that. Okay, that's going to be the potato and the ice cream. So we're going to be left now with pizza, pasta, cake. Okay, all right. So that's what pop does for us. So now let's use the shift method. So we have pizza as the first item, right? So if I do favorite food dot shift now, okay, don't forget pizza is the first item in the array. You can see here. So this is pizza. Okay, if I hit Control S now check. Pizza is no longer the first item, and that's check our console. Pasta is now the first item because pizza has been taken away by the shift method. Okay, so that's good. Now you know how to use shift, on shift, pop, and push. So the thing is kind of confusing. If you think of it, shift and then on shift. So on shift is to add an item, then shift is to remove the item from the first position. Shift on shift. Shouldn't it be shift to add an item and then on shift to remove? I used to think that too, but what can we do? It has been given to us. JavaScript has been given to us like this, so we can't do anything to it. Just use it as it's been provided. Okay. So don't forget, shift is to remove an item from the first position of an array. Okay, that's from the front of an array. And then on shift is to add an item to the front of an array. Okay. Shift is to remove from the front of an array. On shift is to add an item to the front of the array. And then push is to add an item to the end of an array. And then pop is to remove that item or an item from the end of an array. Okay. All right. So let's head back. Okay. So now let's quickly talk about this before we move to another thing. Okay. So we have what's it called? So we have some amount of items inside of our array. So I'm taking away I've taken away this all this our push, pop, and stuff. Now we have our array as it was initially created. Okay, so we have just 5 items inside of it. Okay, now we want to like loop through these our items, right? We have an array, we want to loop through it. How do you loop through an what is even loop? So loop is a way of like iterating over each item inside of your array. Each item inside of your array. So it's a way of looping through them. So that loop is going to like go through all the items inside of the array one after the other, okay? Step by step. So of course first it's going to start from the index 0, then index 1. So how do you do that? Well, we can use the for loop. So we have so how to loop through an array 101, a crash course. Okay, so of course, so we can use for loop like this. We can use for each this guy. We can use for loop. We can use for each. We can use for in. We can use for off. So let's not do too much. Okay. So just we use for in loop. I think that's simpler. For in loop is simpler. And we use for in loop. We use for each. Then you can even use what's it called, map. Okay. We have a lot of ways. So these are the possible ways for each, for in, map, filter, reduce. Okay. But we'll just touch on a couple of them. All right. You use them. So how do you use them? Well, you start with the name of the array, and then you do dot the method you want to use. So we have our array name is favorite food. That's the name of our array, and then let's start with for each, and then you type for each like this for each. So for each, actually, it takes in a callback function. we've not actually talked about function or anything like that, right? So we'll talk about them. It takes in a callback function, okay? So that is basically just write your function like this. So this way, this is an anonymous function. We'll get there. But anonymous function is a function that does not have a name. Okay. All you just need to do is just type the function keyword and then put your parentheses and then with your curly braces in front of it like this. Okay, so this is it function and then like this like this. So this is an anonymous function like this, right? And then if you want to start writing your function, the function body is going to go inside of the parentheses. So let's make this a multi-line comment. So the instruction that what you are going to do, the task the function is going to carry out is going to go straight inside of the curly braces to this guy here. Okay, that's what we're going to do here. All right. So yes, favorite food dot for each. So for each, yeah, it's it iterates over each items inside of your array, right? So how do you get those items? So this your function here, this your anonymous function is going to take like maybe one well it can take like up to 3 parameters. But of course the first parameter you pass, the first argument, let's call it food, right? So this single guy here, that's the parameter here. This food I have inside of this parentheses is going to represent each item inside of the array. Okay, going to represent each item inside of this favorite food here. Okay, so let me bring that guy closer. Then let me bring this function closer. Or this array, let me bring it closer. So notice the syntax. We have the array, which is favorite food. Then we have dot for each. This for each here is the method, and then it takes in a function as the parameter. Okay, so we have a function here. All right. So how can I make this even cleaner? Like this. So I don't know. Let's take it like this. There's a dot here. So favorite food dot for each, and then we pass a function inside of the parameter, and then we have this method. We have this argument here called food. So this food it represents each item, like each item inside of the array. So the first item inside of this food is going to be pizza. The second is going to be pasta. So this food represents each item inside of this array. Okay, so now let's do console.log. I know that this is kind of confusing because we've not talked about function and then we're already like using it. But we'll get there soon. So now I just hit Control S. So using favorite dot for each, and then logging this food here to the console. See what we get here. So let me just take away this guy, comment it out, hit Control S again. Now check our console. So we have they are stacked upon each other. As you can see, they are stacked upon each other. So we have pizza, pasta, sushi, cake, ice cream. So the for each loop now, this for each loop has gone through every single item inside of the array. And then since we did console.log, we printed and then, since we did console.log, we printed everything inside of our console individually for us. And you see we have pizza, pasta, sushi, like that. Okay. So of course you can even modify this. So you can add maybe you can add like a comment. You can add like the text to it alongside the items. You can say okay, so this is a this is a and then we say we hit S. So you get this is a pizza, this is a pasta, this is a sushi, this is a cake. So it's going to like do the same thing for each item. For each item inside of the array. So it's going to like keep reoccurring. like that. It's going to like iterate over each item inside of the array and then do whatever you want to do to it here inside of this curly braces here. Okay. So notice this way we did not use the index to print them out one after the other, like individually. All we just did is we moved through it using the for each method. Yes, for each, right? So how about we try for in? So we have for in here. Let's try for in. So how do you use that? It's different from for each. How is it different? Notice that for each requires you to type the name of the array first, and then with the dot, and then with the dot notation before the for each method. Okay, but this guy doesn't. You don't need to type the name of the array first. All you need to do is just type for, right? This is for in, right? You are going to have we need we need a variable to represent each item inside of the array. Okay, so we say for, then we say let food. So this let food, notice that we use let to create the variable. Okay, we use let to create the variable, and then we say if let food in favorite food like this. So let food in favorite food. Okay, so this food now is going to represent each item inside of the favorite food array. Okay, so of course the first is going to be the pizza, the second is going to be the pasta. So food here, this variable food represents each of the items. Okay, so let's do console.log now. So it's the same thing we did up here. Notice that I've commented this out. So JavaScript is going to ignore this guy here, right? Okay, so now I said let food in favorite food. And then I did console.log, this is a, and then, come on, this is a, let's try food. Okay, hit Control S now. Oh, yes. So well, this is not a bug actually. So the in is actually giving us the index of the food. I mean, the index of the item inside of the array, right? So if you see now, we have 0, 1, 3, then 4 inside of the console like this, right? So, um, how do we actually turn this into the item we need, right? So it's the same way we've been using index to get the what's it called, the items. All you need to do is just type your favorite food, the array name, and then put it inside of the bracket, and then pass the food as the as the index. So because the food is representing the index of the items inside of the array, then it's going to be zero, index of zero. That is pizza, favorite food, and then index of 1. When you get to pasta, then we're going to get pasta in the console. So if I hit Control S now, oh, what happened? So it seems to be an error here. It is not defined. Oh, favorite. I typed favorite instead of favorite food. Okay, so I hit S. I mean Control S. So now we have, this is a pizza, this is a pasta as expected. Okay, but then there's still another way. I didn't add that to the list here and to the means of accessing the items instead of the array. So that is called for of loop. So we have for any loop and we have for of loop. Okay. So this way is somewhat not too cool for me. So instead of using this way, I'd rather do for of. So now, well, let me comment this. I'll copy this, copy and then comment it out, and then paste it here again. So this is going to be the for of loop. So now we have for let food of favorite food, right? So using this of using the for of loop, right? It is just basically going to give you the items straight up, not the index. All right. So this food is going to represent the items themselves. is not going to represent their index, unlike before loop. The for in loop actually represents the index. Okay, if I control S now, the check the console. We have pizza, pasta, sushi, cake. We don't have. It's no longer their index again. That's why actually I find this for of loop the easiest way. Okay, I find it I find it the easiest. So yeah, find it doing the easiest for me. Okay, but then there might be some cases whereby maybe you need the index of the array, and then you also need the item, right? You need their index and then also the item. Okay, so how do you do that? Well, this step we use up here, this for each loop we did up here gives us that, right? So given that the parameter, this function parameter is going to be like maybe 2, we change it to 2. So now for the first parameter, you're going to get the food, which represents the items. And then the second parameter is going to represent the index of the item, okay? The index of the items, rather. Okay, so if you have pizza as the food here, then this index is going to be 0 because pizza is at the index of 0. If you have pasta as the value of the food here, then the index is going to be 1, right? Okay, so let me comment this out. This is for off loop, right? I've taken it off, commented it out like that. If I enable this one now, we have food and then index. So this is a food. I mean, so this is, let's assume this is a pasta. Then I'm going to extend the this thing. So and it is at index, and I pass the index like this. Okay. So if I hit Control S now, is at index 0, right? So the food represents each of the items inside of the array, and then the index represents their index, the items index. Okay. So that's another advantage of using this for each loop. Likewise, map. So if okay, so we use for each here, right? Of course, I can change it to map. Instead of for it, and I type map like that, and then hit Control S. Now I've hit Control S. It's still working the same way like this. Okay, it's the same way. So yeah, you can use map. You can use for each. Okay, so let's end this. So I'm going to stop talking about array for now. We still have a couple of things to cover. Okay. Okay, please, if you have any question regarding array, please don't hesitate to ask. Okay, so let's go back. Now we've covered array. Okay, so now let's talk about. Okay, well, array kind of seem broad, likewise, yeah, likewise function. Okay, but I know you cannot understand everything at once in this session. But as we progress through the program, I believe all these things are going to be we're going to get used to all of them. Okay, I believe as you use them, we're going to be like it's going to become easier for you. At first, it might be difficult, but as you use them, you get familiar with them, and then it become easier. Okay, so let's talk about what is it? Let's talk about object. So if you've ever heard of a saying that says that in JavaScript most things are objects, then that's not well, maybe Elisha. That's true. Even an array, even an array data type is regarded as object. So most uh okay, so most if not all of the browser experience are objects. But what is an object though? Well, to me, objects are anything that has properties, and some can also perform an action. We call it methods by convention. Okay, so an object can have property and also have method. Okay, so according to the array we treated earlier, it, let me see, give me a sec. Okay, so according to the array we treated earlier, so we saw something like um, the variable of the array, then dot for each. Okay, so that dot for each is a method on top of the array. Okay, it's a method. So for instance, we have an object, and then this object can perform some actions. So let's okay, we're going to talk about the scenarios, possible scenarios. So let's just read through. So well, um, so I said to me, anything that has properties and can perform some actions, are objects, right? So for instance, um, we have a car, right? So if you take a look at this car properly, you see that a car has a name, right? A car has a name. It has a model number. It has a color. It has maybe the brand, or I don't know what. Just think, we have a, like a name object. I mean, we have a name property on the car. So let's say we have Toyota, right? We have Toyota. Okay. So maybe it's called model or something. You check the model. Car. Okay. What year was it produced? What's the color? Properties. Yeah, the properties of the car, right? So the car has a name, it has a model, it has a year, it has a color. All these things, they are properties of the car, right? They are not actually actions. They are not actions. So, like for instance, an action that you can perform on a car could be maybe to start the engine of the car, right? Or to press maybe to press the horn to have the car make a sound. It's an action. So when you hit the horn, maybe when you push a button or something there, the car will make a sound, right? So that's an action. Okay. If you want the car to stop, you hit the brake. It's an action, right? So that's how object is. Property. It is a property like in an object. There's also an action. That action is called method. Okay. All right. You see that shortly. Okay. So how do you create an object? Basically simple. It's almost the same way as creating an array. But in this case, you don't need to. You're not using the bracket sign here. Okay. So it's just the curly braces. It's called curly braces. So let's jump into our VS Code and check that out. Let me share my VS Code with you. Okay, so yeah, sorry, it's going to take a while to change it. All right, so I'm changing the screen now. Hmm, open it. So what we're going to do now is we create an object, then we create some properties on the object and also some methods, right? Yes. Okay, so let me create another file now. Call this object.js. Okay, so I'll queue my terminal and then create a new one and then use node mon to start to execute the object.js file. We hide it and then hide this guy. Okay, so now how do we create an object? Let me first put a comment here. So how do we let it be how to create come on an object, create a new car. How to create an object actually, an object. So it's simple, right? All you have to do is have your variable name. So let's call this const. Let's call this person. Let's not use car again. Let's call it person. Okay. So it's created with this uh, curly braces, using curly braces. So using this curly braces now is going to give you an empty object, right? And then you add properties and methods to it afterward. But unlike what we had earlier, which is array, unlike that, there's no anything like index here. Okay, so objects are key values and pairs, right? You have key value pairs. They call them key value pairs. So we have a key and we have a value. That's it. We have a key, we have a value. Mm, so and okay, so let me just give you an instance of what object looks like. So you might see something like this: name, and then we have name, we have age, can have like 5,000. You know, there's somebody that can be this old. So someone with the age of 5,000. Crazy. Okay, so we have a name, we have age, and then we have maybe I call it skin color. It is brown, brown man. Okay, so we can have gender, maybe male. You can even have married, whether the person is married or maybe marital status or something. Then we call this maybe false. So this is what um an object um an object can look like. You might see some object like this. And as a matter of fact, we're going to create an object that looks something like this. Okay, so since we have a person, right? We can maybe add a property to it. Okay, and then the reason they said object are key and a value, a key value to it, is the name the name property here. Well, this name here we see here is a key, and then the value is this guy here. In an object, you always have um this colon, and colon is what is like creating a variable, right? You know, in creating a variable, we have the assignment operator, which is the equal to sign, right? But then in object, we don't use equal to. We don't use equal to sign like this to create to assign a value to a key, right? We use colon. Okay, if you use equal to, you are definitely going to get a big error in your console. Okay, so don't use the assignment operator here. Use colon. Okay, so this is the key. Name is the key, and then the value is this remain assigned to it here. Okay, so the age is the key, and then the 5,000 is the value, key value. Okay, so that's it. So now we have an empty object initialized above. How do we add a value to this object? How do we have how do we add what's it called? How do we add a property to it? How? Okay, all you need to do is just type the person, type the name of the variable of that object, and then use your dot notation. Right? They call it dot notation. So just put dot, and then the name of the key you want to add to it. So in my case, I add name, and then how how do you want to like which value do you want to give to it? In this case, we use the assignment operator. Okay, the reason why I use an assignment operator is because we are assigning a value. We want to put a key inside and then want to give it a value. But if we were inside of the object parentheses like this, you can't say name and then equal to John. It won't work this way. It's going to work like this. This is how it's supposed to be. And as a matter of fact, after we add this value, it's going to look something like this instead of the console. This is how it's going to look. So this is how standard objects are. This is an object like this, okay? But to add a value to an object after it has been created, that's when we use the dot notation, and then we use equal to as the assignment operator to assign a value to the key that we're going to that we're creating inside of the object. Okay, let me put it this way. Since we already have an existing object called person, right? And then we want to add a value, I mean a key and a value to that object. That's why we're doing like this. Well, that's why we're doing it this way. To add a value to an existing object, or to add a key and a value to an existing object, you use the assignment operator. So you have the object and then the dot notation, and then the key name, and then use your equal to assign a value to the key. Okay. So in this case, the name is the key, and then the value is John. Okay. So let me hit Control S now, and then console.log um the person object to the console. Log the person object to the console. Now, you see our console, we have name, and then we have the colon, and then we have the John string assigned to it. All right, so that's it. That's how an object looks like. That's how it looks like, okay? So how do we, now, we use the dot notation to add a key and a value to this, our object property. How do we get, um, how do we get, okay, how do we get a property out of an object? Okay, so you can either use the dot notation. In fact, there are two ways you can add a key and a value to your object, your existing object. One is using the dot notation. That's what we just did here. So let's see, using dot notation. All right, we have using dot notation, and then we also have using now. You can use the bracket notation. This is more like using the index, right? It's more like using the index, but the only difference is in our array, the index is number, right? It's number, but this one is not number. It's just name of the key, okay? The name of the key inside of the bracket. So this case now we've already added a name attribute. I mean a name property. Now I want to add age property now. So this age property is going to be assigned, let's say 5,000, as this is our template using to work now, right? And then this is the template we're using. We want to have something, an object that looks like this. Okay, so let me check if we have any question. Please, if you have any questions, if you're confused or something, just ask your question, okay? All right, so I've used the brackets notation to add an age to our existing person object, okay? Now I hit Control S. Now see my console. I have name and I have age. Okay. Okay, I have name and I have age. So I've used the bracket notation to add an age property to the object. Okay. All right, that's good. So I believe now you know the two ways we can use to add property to an existing object. And of course, you can create your object and initialize it with all the things you want, like all the properties you want or you need inside of it. There is no restriction to that. Of course, you can create this person object and just pass your name, Friday, okay, and then give your age, specify everything. Yeah, okay, the age should not be a number. Of course, the age can be a string. You can initialize your stuff how you want it. You can arrange your object how you want it. But just know the only rule it has is it's a key and it's a key value. It's a key, like you have a key and a value. Okay, I don't know how to put it. Key value pairs. All right. Okay. So can have it like this: name, Friday, and then age 24. This name can either be a number or it can be a string. There's no restriction to that. You do your thing the way you want it, okay? And you can have your maybe is married to be a boolean like this, false, okay? You can have it like that. You can just do your thing the way you want it. Structure your object anyhow you want it. But then, okay, so since we know that the person has a name, has an age, and you can even specify the marital status of the person, and then you can have your biography, the person's biography, or anything. Just and okay, so we already have two properties inside of the object so far. Okay, so how do we add a method to it? Okay, you can have person dot say hi or intro, person dot intro. So this is going to be a function, right? So we are going to talk about function soon. Okay, so this is a method right now, right? So method is basically the action, right? That an object can do. Okay, okay, it's an action that an object can carry out. Okay, so person dot intro. So how do we do this now? Okay, so we can say console dot log. Hello there. My name is yes. Now I don't know if this is the right time to talk about this keyword. Okay, but bear in mind that there's something called this keyword in JavaScript, and it's mostly used inside of an object. Of course, it's only used inside of an object. Okay, so this keyword, basically, what this keyword does is it refers to the current object that you are inside of. That's the object that you are inside of, right? So we know that person is an object, right? Regardless of maybe we are inside um, the intro method, okay? Regardless of that, this is basically pointing to the parent object, that's the object itself, the object itself. What is the object itself? The object itself is the person object. As you can see, this is the object here and it's assigned to person. So person is the object, right? So this is, think of this as okay, so we have this is equal to person. That's it. This is equal to person because this person is the object we are working on. Okay. So therefore, the same way is person is equal to this, like that. Okay. Person is equal to this. So this person is the object. Okay. So in case you see this inside of this place, just take like this person dot name. Okay. The person dot name is basically telling you that, oh, okay, I want you to get the name of this person for me. All right. So as a matter of fact, um, maybe I should comment out this intro, and then now that I logged, as you can see now, inside of the console, all I did is just log the person to the console, right? So I want to retrieve the name of this person from the object. As you can see, we have the object inside of the console here, so it has a name property. So I want to access the name property. Now all I have to do is just say dot name on top of the person. So I have person dot name. That's the object dot name. Okay. So if I click save now, we have the name of the person, which is John. Okay. So that's how to retrieve a property from an object. All you need to do is using the dot notation. Same, you can also use the bracket notation. Okay. So the same way you used to assign a value to it, that's the same way you can use to retrieve it, except without the equal to operator. Okay. Without the assignment operator. Okay, so I'm using the dot notation here to get the name of the person. So for the age of the person, I'm going to use the bracket notation. So Don't forget it's a string. If you're using a bracket notation, you always want to like make the key a string, okay? So the age now, I pass the age inside of the bracket like that. So I still get it back. So we got John and then 5,000. Okay. So this is how to retrieve an item from an object. So we are going to do that here now. We are going to do that for the intro of the person. So this intro is a method, okay? It's an action that the person can perform. So this intro now is going to be like how do we call it? So it's the action, just like I mentioned earlier, that a car has a start action, it has a stop action. Okay. The same way you can call a person, or okay, I said intro, right? Maybe I should have just call it jump or say name or something like that. Okay, this is the action. Person can jump, the person can talk. Okay, so yeah, just think of this intro as an action also. Okay, so intro, we have hello there. My name is. Don't forget, I told you earlier that the way you can retrieve a property from an object is by using maybe the dot notation. All you need to do is the object dot the particular key you want to retrieve its value. Okay, so if I say person dot name here now, it's going to give us the name of the person. All right, but then instead of using person dot name, we can also use this dot name because this still refers to person according to what we have here. So this also refers to the object itself. Okay, so person is the object itself, and then we do dot name on the object. It's going to give us um the name of the person. That's it's going to look for a property with the key of name and then retrieve its value for us. Okay, so I'm going to use this dot name instead of person dot name here. So if I hit Control S now, don't forget I have console.log person here. So it's going to give us all the property and method inside of the object. So now we see it inside of the console now. Like we have the object, we have name and we have age, we have intro. I notice the value of the intro is basically function, right? It's function, and then the title is anonymous. Okay, that's because it's a function without a name. It's an anonymous function like this. Okay. Okay. So now, how do we get this person to like how do we get to access the intro of this person? I mean, of this object. All you need to do is just do dot intro like this, right? And since it's a function, you want to put these two you want to put these two parentheses in the front of it like that, so it knows that you're calling it. If I hit Control S now, check the console. We have hello there. My name is John. Okay, that's because we did this dot name here. All right. So we did hello there. My name is. Now we have this dot name here. So don't forget, I said this keyword basically refers to the object itself. Okay, that's it's referring to the person object, and then it tries to get the dot name on it. Okay. So this undefined is basically because we are not returning anything from the function. Okay. So if I do something like since I'm doing console.log here, I don't really need to write another console.log inside of this intro method. Okay, so I'm just going to remove this and then type return. Okay, so just like that, I've added return. Okay, so the function whenever the function is called or this method is called, it's always going to return this string. I mean, this guy here like this. It's going to return it back to the caller. So that way we can even save the return value of this um, function here instead of a variable. Okay, so if I hit Ctrl S now, you see we're no longer getting the undefined again because we are returning this value. Okay, so it's returned hello there. My name is John. All right, so it's returning the person's name. Okay, Okay, of course, same way, you can even add more. You can say, okay, we can use the plus. So we talked about some concatenation before, right, in one of our previous class. Okay, so this is concatenation. So we are concatenating these strings together. So I can say um, my age is, so concatenate and then add the age. So we say this dot age. So this keyword represents the object itself, and then it's doing it's doing dot age on it. So it's trying to retrieve the age value. Okay, and my age is, give a space here. So now if you check the console, now we have hello there. My name is John and my age is 5,000. Nice. This is one of our ancestors. Okay, so that's good. All right. I believe you now know what object is. So you can create an object by initializing it this way, an empty object here, and then you can modify it. So you can modify the properties just like this, adding dot, using the dot notation, or using the bracket notation to modify or add what's it called, property and method to the object. Okay. So please, if you have any question, just don't forget, just ask. So somebody is asking that what about if we have multiple objects declared? Does the this keyword applies here? Well, except you're trying to tell me that you want to have an object inside of another object. Okay. But if that's not the case, then let's say you have a person object separately, and then you have another object, maybe um, animal, called animal, right? As long as we are inside of the object and are trying to access this, it's going to refer to the individual or what's it called, object. So, for instance, now if I create, let me see, okay, so let's assume that let's assume I have another object called const, call it, and oh no, let's use our car this time. Yeah, it's a car, and then in this case, I want to have all the values. I mean, I want to have all the properties and methods inside here, initialized inside here. So, car, let's say the name is Toyo. Yes. Say model, no, not the manufacturer. So model Camry, and then I can say maybe I can put um a start method. Can give it a start method. Okay, can give it a start method. So this start method, of course, a method is a function, right? So function, anonymous function. Okay, so I have it like this. Okay, so let me try to format what I have here. So it has been formatted. So I have a start function, right? So this is basically going to say it's going to return starting the car. Okay. I can even have a get name function. Okay, and that is going to be another action on it. So you need to separate this with comma. Okay. Okay. So get name is really going to return let's say get name. So or maybe get info. So you have car dot get info. So maybe my my name is, I don't know. So my name is this dot name and my model is this dot model. Simple. So my name is this dot name means it's going to basically get Toyota. My name is Toyota, and my model is since this dot model, since we gave it a specified model here, which is Camry, then I'm going to get Camry. So now the this dot model here is basically pointing to the object, the current object, which is the car object, right? It's different from this person's object. So the this dot, whatever we do, well, whatever we did inside of this person's object is different from what we did inside of the car object. Okay, so let's also try something else. Maybe this is what you're talking about here. Uh, let's call this maybe what can I call this now? I want to create another object inside of this same object. So let's see. I don't know. Gadget. Copilot. Guide also. Engine. Okay, good. Type gas size. Okay. No. The name of okay, that's enough now. So we have gadgets inside of it. This gadget is an object still, right? Okay. So I don't know why we are having errors here. Okay. Oh yeah, that's it. Okay, so let me hide this console. So we have our car, what's it called? Our car object. So it has a property of name. When you see, when I hover on this name key, VS Code says it's a property, and then the name of the property is name, and then the data type is string, as you can see above. So if I go on this start also, we have properties start, and then it's a function that returns a string. So when you see this arrow and greater than sign, it's returning a string. Okay, so this is basically a method. Start is a method, right? So inside of these gadgets, I also want to have get info, right? So it's going to be a function. So what about if I return, well, create that? It's kind of messy, I know. I mean, having a method inside of, having object inside of object and then method inside of that object, kind of messy right now. So if I, so now instead of this get info, now we have return. My engine is this dot engine dot type. Notice that we called this and then we did dot engine. That means that this keyword inside of this gadget object. So as you can see, let me give some space here. So notice that the gadget is an object, right? But and then it has get info inside of it. But when I did this inside, the this does not this gadget object representing the main object itself, which is the car object, right? So we said this points to the car object, and then we did dot engine. Oh, easy. Sorry, I think I'm mistaken there. So the this dot engine, okay, it's pointing to this gadgets rather. Sorry, this is pointing to this gadget, and then inside of gadget, we are pointing to engine to get the engine's information, right? So first things first, let's execute this and see if we're going to get exactly what we are expecting to get, which is uh, no error. Yeah, no error. We don't plan to get an error here. So just get info. So notice how I did this now. I said person dot gadget. Okay. So we access person's variable, person's object, and then we did dot gadget to get inside of the gadget object, and then we did dot get info to enter inside of the gadget object to this get info. Okay. So if you have loads of objects inside the access, That's what I'm going to be doing. The dot notation, what I'm going to be using to be penetrating them. Okay, so let's hit Ctrl S and check our console now. Okay, so we got an error. That's cool. So gadgets get info is the error. Okay, cannot be property of undefined. Reading get info. Oh, okay. This is good. This is good. All right. So now we have an error. Okay. So let's just take it one after the other. So let's log person dot. Oh, forgive me. It's car, not person. Ah, I've actually forgotten. It's supposed to be car. Okay. The object car. If I hit Control S, I check the console. So we have what we want, what we needed here. My engine is a gas V8. So if we check inside of gadgets and then get info, we have my engine is this of engine, the type, okay, and then we have a space and then this dot engine dot size. So let's make this let's modify it. So once um my engine is gas and the type and the size is which is the V6. Now we have it. My engine is a gas and the size is V6. Okay, so I believe this has answered your question. Okay, so if we have object inside of object, with this keyword, this keyword is going to basically point to the current object you are inside of. Okay, that's what we got here now. So we have the initial object here, which is the main object, and then afterward we have another object inside of it that has properties and methods. So in an object, properties are like a variable that you just assign a value. They are the key and the value, okay? But methods are the key and the function, okay? So methods have a name and then they are assigned to functions, okay? So functions are basically actions that an object can perform, okay? So I believe this okay, so I believe this has answered your question. I do understand. I do understand. Okay, someone said that I do understand as the this was used within the declared object. I don't really understand this question. Is it you don't understand or you understood? Okay, so the person said I do understand as the this was used. And I don't really understand that, but basically the this keyword is basically pointing to the current object you are inside of. So just take it as the context of the object. Yes, it's just so this keyword, the context of this keyword depends on the object you are inside of. Okay, so if you are inside of maybe an object that is 2 levels deep from the parent object, then this keyword is basically the very first, the current object you're inside of. All right. So we use gadget here as a primary as a secondary object. It's a secondary object because it's a child object instead of the main object. Okay. So gadget is the child object inside of the main parent object, which is the initial object. Okay. So using this inside of this child object is really pointing to the child object and not the parent object, which is the car object. So the car object is the parent object, and then the gadget object is the child's object. Okay. So this is basically pointing to the child object because we are currently inside of the gadget object, which is the child object. Okay. So if we use this there, then you get the child's object. All right. But I think if you want to get to maybe you want to go up outside of this child object and to the parent object, you just need to use the name of the object, that's the parent object. Okay. So now instead of doing this dot engine dot type here, or okay, instead of doing this dot engine dot type, we can possibly do car dot gadgets dot engine like that, and we should still get the same thing. So car dot gadget dot engine dot size. So that way we call the parent object, which is car, and then we access the gadget object, which is the child's object, and then we enter inside of that, and then we access the engine object and dot size. Okay, so that's the way you can like what's it called, narrow down objects. So I hit Control S now, and then let's check the console. My engine is a gas and the size is V6. So it still works the same way, right? So if you're inside of one object, maybe a child object, and then you want to retrieve property from the current object, and if the this keyword context is different from each other, then you basically want to use the name of the object, the parent object. Okay. So assuming that maybe we're not even trying to access gadget, yeah, and we want maybe we need the name of the car, right? So that's when we can use this the car name. That's let's say um that's when we use the name of the parent object rather. So car dot name like this, okay? Because we know that if we use this dot name, it's not going to be valid, right? That's because this keyword context has changed. It's not the parent context again. It's now the child's context, which is the gadget context. So therefore, know when to use your this keyword, or perhaps before you use it, log it to the console. Like for instance, console.log dot log this like this, right? So say this dot engine dot type, right? So I log this to the console now. If I so I log this to the console inside of the get info, right? So I did and I did console.log car.gadget.get info. Now the this keyword, this is what the this keyword is pointing to this guy here, this object here in the console. So we get the engine object, I mean the gadget object rather. Okay, so that is the gadget object that we got as the context of the this keyword inside of this get info function. Okay. All right. So we've exceeded our time, and I believe we've learned a lot here. Okay. So all right. I'll round up here now. Okay. So our next class is the next week. I think it's Wednesday. Okay. So maybe we'll just like summarize what we did here or recap a bit of it next week so that we can refresh our memory on what we've learned today. Okay, so yeah, if anybody have any question, please don't forget to drop it in the in our Discord server. Drop it on the Discord server, specifically the room channel from the backend track. Okay, so therefore that way I can answer your question even after the class. Okay. All right. So I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'm also going to share. I'm also going to share the resources I used here with you guys on the room channel. Okay. All right, guys. So that's going to be all for this class, and please don't forget to ask your question even after the class. Thank you so much, and you guys can start. You can start leaving the stream. Okay. All right.